My mother didn't even blink when she said it across the dinner table. "You're not half the woman your sister is." The fork slipped out of my hand before I even realized I'd let it go. It hit the plate with that sharp, metallic clatter that makes everyone stop breathing at once. 8 pairs of eyes lifted. 8 mouths tightened, waiting for me to swallow it, like I always did. Like I'd been trained to do since childhood. I stared at her across the table, my mother perfectly collected in her pale blue silk blouse, lips painted in that shade that never smudged, posture straight, eyes bored. She spoke cruelty the way other mothers spoke affection, effortlessly, and my sister Olivia leaned back in her chair, already smiling like her victory had been inevitable. She didn't need to say anything. She never did. She existed loudly. I existed quietly. That had been the arrangement for 26 years. But something in me snapped at that table. Not loudly. Not violently. Quietly, almost politely, like a truth that had waited too long. "Funny," I said, my voice steady though my chest felt like it had been stapled shut, "because I'm the one who's been paying your mortgage for the last 3 years. 3 plates stopped midair. Someone choked on water. Someone dropped a napkin. My father's fork froze halfway to his mouth. My mother blinked twice. Slowly this time, like maybe she misheard. For a moment nobody spoke. The dining room was suddenly too bright, the chandelier heat pressing against my forehead, making the room tilt slightly, as if the floor couldn't decide what direction to stand in. My palms were damp. My heart thudded, not with fear, but with the strange, unfamiliar pulse of liberation. "My what?" my mother finally whispered. "Your mortgage," I repeated. "Every month. Time. For 3 years." I let the words hang there, like a storm cloud just beginning to split. "You're welcome." My father went pale, like bone white, like dead pale. His chair scraped back half an inch, the wood groaning under the sudden shift of weight. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at her, and I swear in that split second, I saw feared my mother wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid of something else, something buried beneath that perfectly ironed persona she wore like armor. "You've been paying," my sister began, but the words disappeared as quickly as they came. Because revealing that meant acknowledging something she never had the capacity for. Dependence. I didn't wait for them to catch up. Quiet people learn to speak quickly when they finally speak at all. "You called me a failure," I said, my voice shaking now, not from weakness but adrenaline. "But without me, you wouldn't have a house to sit in while you tell me I'm not half the woman she is." My mother's jaw flexed. Olivia's smile cracked. My father reached for his water glass with hands that weren't steady enough to hold it. The room changed shape. Not physically, emotionally. A hierarchy years in the making shifted 2 inches to the left. This wasn't just about money. It hadn't been for a long time. I realized then, as my throat tightened and my spine straightened, that I had kept quiet for so long they never imagined I could take up space. I looked around the table, at the stunned silence, at the splintered pride, at the unraveling certainty, and I almost told them everything. Almost, because the truth was, the mortgage wasn't the secret, that was just the first crack in the wall. But that moment, the shock, the silence, the fear in his eyes, was nothing compared to what came after. Because the real secret hadn't been revealed yet. My name is Nora Ellis, and for most of my life, I've been the quiet one in a family that never stops talking about my sister. People assume quiet means fragile, or meek, or uninterested in attention. In my case, it just meant I learned early that attention came with strings attached. Performance, perfection, comparison. And I preferred invisible over indebted. I lived in Portland, in a 1-bedroom apartment above a coffee shop that smelled like roasted beans and rain. I worked as a financial manager for a logistics firm. Spreadsheets, audits, projections. Numbers were clean, predictable, obedient. People weren't. My days were built around routine. A morning run along the waterfront, espresso from downstairs, work that blurred into silence. Dinner alone, a book on the nightstand, alarm set for tomorrow. It wasn't glamorous, but it was my own. Paid for with my money, not given at someone's discretion. My coworkers called me reliable. Organized. Reserved. The kind of person who remembered birthdays but avoided office parties. I didn't take offense. Stability was my love language. And if nobody noticed it, that was fine. Quiet isn't absence, it's discipline. But every Friday, I broke my own rhythm to sit at my parents' dinner table, pretending I wasn't a stranger in a house I helped keep standing. They never asked me about work. They never asked much of anything. Not because they didn't care, but because Vivian took up all available narrative space. There was never enough room for two daughters, not when one came pre-packaged with headlines. Vivian Ellis. The success story. The magazine features. The gallery openings. The international grants. She wasn't evil, just loud. Magnetic, dramatic, permanently in motion. The kind of person who never came home without a story worth performing over dessert. I knew the script before I stepped through the door. Hug, compliment, sit, listen. Vivian's new project, Vivian's new admirer, Vivian's new crisis that sounded glamorous because she told it like a triumph. I once tried to talk about a promotion I got. Director of Financial Strategy, the youngest in the company's history. My mother listened for 8 seconds before interrupting. That reminds me, Viv got invited to speak in London. The table shifted, the spotlight swung, and I learned, again, to swallow whatever didn't sparkle. Not because they disliked me. In their minds, they adored both daughters. But they adored Vivian's story more. Loud wins, visible wins, wins you can brag about in the grocery store aisle. Quiet competence didn't photograph well. It didn't impress distant relatives. It didn't sell the myth of a perfect family, so I made myself small, efficient, independent, unnoticed. Because invisibility kept the peace, I handled my problems alone. Paid my bills alone. Fixed the mortgage problem alone. And every Friday I walked into that house, smiled across the table, and pretended it didn't sting that nobody ever wondered how I managed to keep my life together on my own. I learned not to ask for help. My parents didn't dislike me, they just preferred the louder story. And every Friday I showed up anyway, swallowing what I wished I could say. That Friday dinner began like all the others, but there was a weight in the air I couldn't name. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. No slammed doors, no raised voices. Just something taut, threaded beneath the small talk and wine pours. A stiffness in my mother's smile, a too deliberate calm if anyone dared to interrupt Vivian's monologue. Vivian sat at the head of the table. Not technically but socially. One elbow hooked over her chair, chin tilted like she'd already won whatever game we were about to pretend we weren't playing. My mother kept glancing between her and me. Her eyes sharp and assessing, as if she already knew how the night would end and had decided I should lose it. The conversation followed the usual script. Vivian's gallery opening, Vivian's travel plans, Vivian's invitation to speak somewhere that sounded too expensive to pronounce. I nodded when expected, smiled on cue, careful not to draw attention. I'd gotten a promotion that week, salary bump, department restructuring, the kind of thing people toasted over, but mentioning it felt like tossing a rock into a hurricane and hoping anyone heard the splash. Still, halfway through dinner I tried. I actually got offered a team lead. That reminds me, my mother cut in, turning toward my sister with practiced enthusiasm. Viv helped with that mortgage paperwork last week. The bank said they'd never seen such organized documents. Vivian lifted her wine glass with a smug, modest smile. "Oh, it was nothing," she said, like a queen accepting praise for charity. The table cooed. My father nodded proudly. Someone murmured, "She always steps up." And it hit me, sharp as cold water. They had rewritten the story. 3 years of payments, mine, had been erased, replaced with a single week of Vivian alphabetizing forms. 3 years of skipped vacations because I couldn't justify spending money when theirs depended on me. 3 years of declining graduate classes because tuition meant choosing between my future and their roof. 3 years of sacrificing my down payment, watching friends buy homes while I rented above a coffee shop. Not because I was noble, not because I enjoyed responsibility, but because someone had to step up when the bank letters came and my parents panicked in silence. And now Vivian was getting applause for helping. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Keep watching, this gets intense. My chest tightened. The room felt smaller, louder, hotter. The chandelier lights pressing against my skin like punishment. I wasn't angry that Vivian got credit. She always did. I was angry that nobody wondered how the mortgage survived the 3 years before she touched a single sheet of paper. I looked at my father, expecting maybe recognition, maybe guilt. But he just leaned back, easy, smug, proud of his golden child. "She's just so responsible," he said, smiling at Vivian. "We're lucky one of you girls knows how to manage finances." I choked on a bitter laugh that didn't make it past my throat. I'd been managing their finances longer than Vivian had known how to file her taxes. My mother caught my expression, noticed it, and instead of asking what was wrong, she gave me that look, softly condescending, politely dismissive. The look that said, "Don't make this about you. You know your place. Smile and let her shine." Something inside me cracked, not loudly but deeply, like a fault line shifting miles underground. I didn't stand or shout or slam anything. I just inhaled, steady and slow, as the room warped around me, and then my mother, sensing she hadn't won enough, leaned back and delivered the line that would end our family as we knew it. "You're not half the woman your sister is." Silence swallowed the table. My pulse roared. And for the first time in my life at that table, I didn't push the feeling down. I let it rise. I pushed my chair back slowly. The sound of wood scraping across the floor cut the air clean in half. Nobody moved. Not my father with his shaking glass. Not my mother with her mouth drawn thin. Not Vivian soaking in whatever spotlight remained. I stood, not with fury, not with theatrics, but with a calm so sharp it felt dangerous. "I've been paying your mortgage for 3 years, I repeated, quieter this time, clearer. "And I'm done." My mother blinked hard. "Nora, this isn't appropriate dinner conversation." As if the problem wasn't her insult, only my response to it. My father added, "We can discuss this later. Don't make a scene." I almost laughed. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't throwing anything. I wasn't breaking down. For the first time in my life, I wasn't shrinking. "It's not a scene," I said. "It's a boundary." Vivian rolled her eyes like boundaries were beneath her. My mother reached for the wine bottle, annoyed, inconvenienced. "You're being dramatic," she sighed. I looked at her, the woman who had taught me every method of self-erasure, then at my sister, who never once wondered how their life stayed afloat. "You don't get to rewrite this," I said. No one followed. No one apologized. No one grabbed my arm or rushed after me, because why would they? In their minds I had always come back, but I walked out, pushing through the glass doors into the wet Portland night, where the air smelled like asphalt and pine and rain, a smell that felt like oxygen after years of holding my breath. My phone buzzed in my pocket. An overdraft warning for a payment that had hit earlier than scheduled. Right there on the sidewalk, under a flickering cafe sign, I opened the banking app and canceled the automatic transfer. No hesitation. No guilt. 3 years of "just this month." 3 years of "we'll pay you back soon." 3 years of "don't tell anyone. We don't want people worrying." Gone with a single tap. Drop a flexed biceps in the comments if you've ever had to walk away to find yourself. I expected my phone to explode that night. Calls, texts, rage, bargaining. Instead I got silence. Silence so heavy it felt intentional. The kind of silence used as punishment. But the quiet didn't hurt the way it used to. It freed me. The days that followed were strange at first, like learning to walk after years of limping. I built new routines. Early runs by the river, feet pounding pavement like punctuation. Weeknight cooking classes where strangers laughed loudly and nobody overshadowed anyone. Long, messy hikes up Mount Hood, where my muscles burned but my brain finally rested. I made decisions with my money that benefited me. I spent weekends without dread. I slept without clenching my jaw. Distance didn't erase history. It illuminated it. I started seeing the patterns. The guilt disguised as gratitude, the "we're so proud of you," that came only when no one else was listening. The constant reframing of my help as a temporary assist rather than a structural dependency. I realized I hadn't been supporting a family. I'd been enabling a mythology. And the longer I stayed away, the more the truth came into focus. With distance, I saw everything more clearly. Every "just this month." Every "don't tell anyone." And then came the photo that changed everything. It arrived on a Sunday morning from Mrs. Jensen, my parents' elderly neighbor, a picture that made my entire body go still. I just finished a run, sweat cooling on my skin, coffee steaming in my hand, when my phone buzzed. Mrs. Jensen rarely texted. She still wrote checks and mailed birthday cards, so anything from her felt urgent. The message was simple. Thought you should see this, dear. Attached was a photo taken across the street from my parents' house, huge white banner stretched between two trees, flapping proudly in the Oregon rain. Congratulations, Vivian, for preserving the family home. The word preserving landed like a punch. Not saving, not supporting. Preserving, as though she'd heroically rescued something fragile from disaster. My first reaction wasn't tears. It wasn't heartbreak. It was steel, cold, immediate, razor-sharp. 3 years of payments. My payments, rebranded as her triumph. They didn't just rewrite the story behind closed doors. They printed it on vinyl and hung it for the neighbors to see. Mrs. Jensen added, "They're planning some big thing next week. I didn't want you to be blindsided." I sat down, stared at the banner, and felt something inside me shift from wounded to strategic. I opened my laptop and started gathering records. Bank transfers, monthly statements, flagged emails, screenshots of reminders, every single confirmation number. 3 years, perfectly documented. 3 years of sacrifice laid out in columns and timestamps. That same afternoon, my phone rang. Sarah, my cousin, the only relative with a conscience. "You heard?" she asked without preamble. "Heard what?" "They're throwing a dinner next Saturday. A surprise appreciation party for Vivian. Slideshow, speeches, the whole thing." Of course there would be a slideshow. Vivian's life didn't happen unless it was projected onto walls with ambient music and catered desserts. Sarah hesitated. "They asked me to help. And I said yes. Because I want to know what they're saying." Her voice dropped. "And because I thought you might want to do something." I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because my mind was already working faster than my mouth. That I opened a blank presentation file. Title slide. Who actually paid for the family home? I wasn't emotional. I was efficient. I added a timeline. Month-by-month payments. A bar chart. My income versus contributions. Screenshots of messages. Just this month. Don't tell anyone. Thank you again, we'll pay you back soon. Data doesn't scream. It doesn't accuse. It simply stands there, undeniable. By the time I finished, my living room looked like an evidence lab. I booked a U-Haul, packed up my apartment, and moved to Seattle. 1 bedroom again, but sunlight poured through the windows, and nobody talked over me. New job, new city, new silence. The kind that wasn't punishment. Just peace. 5 days later, an envelope slid under my new door. Cream cardstock, heavy, embossed with gold foil. In honor of Vivian Ellis, whose courage and dedication preserved our family home. Dinner at the country club. Formal dress. All guests welcome. That I didn't react. I just opened my laptop and saved the presentation 3 times. I saved the file to my laptop, to the cloud, and onto a USB drive I kept in my bag like a heartbeat. When the invitation arrived, I knew exactly what I had to do. Wait until you see what she does next. This is where it gets good. The restaurant in downtown Seattle glowed with soft amber lights. Through the glass, I saw familiar silhouettes, and I knew this night would change everything. The event space was dressed like a wedding reception. White linens, candles in hurricane glass, servers drifting between tables with trays of champagne. My relatives were already seated, laughing loudly, dressed in their best versions of themselves. I paused at the entrance, smoothing down the black dress I'd bought for this night. Not expensive, not flashy, just clean, elegant, undeniably mine. Few cousins waved. Some aunts whispered behind manicured hands. They'd heard the rumors. Something about drama, something about me acting out. My family didn't need facts to create a narrative. To the head table sat my parents, regal with practiced pride, and beside them Vivian. Hair perfectly curled, wearing a cream gown that seemed to glow beneath the amber lights. The banner from the yard had been recreated on a smaller scale for the foyer. In honor of Vivian Ellis, whose courage and dedication preserved our family home. I didn't react. I walked to my table, a quiet island among cousins who weren't sure if they should say hello or avoid me altogether. This is the moment everything changes. Stay with me. My father stood first. A man who had never liked microphones but always liked being heard. He tapped his glass and cleared his throat. Family, friends, thank you for coming. Tonight we celebrate a remarkable woman, Our daughter Vivian, who stepped up when it mattered most. People clapped. Cameras flashed. Vivian dipped her head with faux humility, like royalty acknowledging her subjects. She helped us navigate overwhelming financial challenges, he continued. Paperwork, negotiations. The kind of responsibility most adults would run from. I felt my jaw tense, but I stayed still. Silent. Waiting that he gestured toward the screen. And now, a look back at her unforgettable journey. The slideshow began. Vivian smiling with a pen in her hand. Vivian standing outside a bank. Vivian hugging my mother. Each image accompanied by captions like, "Saving our legacy. Doing what needed to be done." It was mythology dressed as memory, and no one questioned it. Why would they? Stories told loudly become truth. The third photo faded, and before the fourth appeared, the screen flickered. Then went black. A murmur rippled across the room. And suddenly, my first slide appeared. White background, black letters, clean, unmistakable. Mortgage payments, 36 months, Nora Ellis. The room froze. A server dropped a fork. Then came the bar chart. Payments by date, amounts, confirmation numbers. No commentary. No narration. Just data. Cold, undeniable data. The whispering started instantly. Small, sharp gasps slicing through the candlelight. I stood, walked toward the screen, and positioned myself in the glow of the projector's light. "My name has been missing from this story," I said, voice steady. "So I'm putting it back." My father lurched to his feet. "Nora, stop. We can talk about this outside." "No," I said. "You rewrote this publicly. I'll correct it publicly." Silence swallowed the room. Slide after slide advanced. Bank statements, transfers, text messages. "Just this month. Don't tell anyone. We'll pay you back soon." Vivian's face crumpled. For the first time in her life, she didn't have a performance ready. She stammered. "That's not the whole story. It's the financial story," I said. "The one tied to this banner, this dinner, this myth about who saved what." My mother stood, cheeks blazing. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No," I replied. "I'm embarrassing you. And that's the problem, right? Not what happened, just who saw." Cousin gasped. An aunt covered her mouth, and my father stepped toward me, hand raised. Not to hit, but to silence. "We don't need everyone involved in this." "They already are," I said. "You invited them." I clicked to the final slide. "I don't want the house. I don't want money back. I just won't let you erase me." Shocked silence. A few quiet nods from people who had spent their lives being erased. Vivian whispered something I couldn't hear. My mother sank into her chair. My father stared at the screen, pale, suddenly small. I shut the laptop, ejected the USB, and slipped it into my bag. No one called my name. No one reached for me. No one apologized. I didn't wait for closure. Closure is a luxury built on mutual accountability. They had none. That I walked through the room, past the candles and wine glasses and stunned faces, through the doors and into the night. I turned and walked toward the door, feeling lighter than I had in years. Outside, the cool Seattle night wrapped around me, and I realized, this wasn't revenge. It was release. 2 days after the dinner, I was watering a small plant on my balcony when someone knocked. I opened the door to find my parents standing in the hallway of my small Seattle apartment. They looked different, still familiar, still proud in posture, but smaller somehow, like the world had finally placed weight on them instead of me. My mother's eyes flicked across the exposed brick and second-hand furniture, as if calculating value, but she said nothing. My father held a folder against his chest like a peace offering. They didn't sit. They stood awkwardly, shifting their weight, rehearsed lines collapsing in their throats. Finally, my dad cleared his voice. "We shouldn't have let things get so far. We should have acknowledged everything you did." My mother nodded, her voice thin. "And we want to fix it. We've already spoken to the lawyer. We can add your name to the house." Once, those words would have cracked me wide open, validation, belonging, a seat at the table. But standing in my own doorway, in a home I paid for with my work, my voice, my name. Something inside me didn't reach for it, I didn't even have to think. I don't want the house, I said gently. I have a home now, my own. They blinked, stunned. My mother looked away, ashamed. My father exhaled like a door closing. What I needed wasn't property, I continued. I needed respect. I needed honesty. And if we rebuild anything, it starts from here. Not from pretending. There was no dramatic hug. No tearful reconciliation. Just a nod, tentative, fragile, real. Before they turned to leave, when the door clicked shut, the apartment felt brighter, as if something toxic had finally emptied out. I stood by the balcony again, watering the plant I'd nearly forgotten was in my hands. Seattle stretched beneath me, glittering as if to say, you made it here. And it's yours. For years, I'd mistaken silence for peace. I'd swallowed every resentment, convinced that speaking up made me difficult, ungrateful, unlovable. But silence doesn't protect you, it erases you. And when I finally chose myself, I didn't lose a family. I lost a performance. And I gained a life. If you've ever carried a burden in silence or been written out of your own story, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Hit subscribe. More stories are coming about finding your voice, standing your ground, and redefining family. Which moment hit you hardest? The dinner confrontation or this final choice? Have you ever chosen yourself over keeping the peace? Share your story. This is a safe space.